Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for tuning in to the Talk About It Mate podcast.
In this podcast, we're letting you in on the ground floor of the next mental health revolution.
Fundamentally, people want to be seen and heard, and it doesn't take a professional to provide that.
Peer support is transforming people's lives, and we're going to show you how it's done.
We'll start each podcast with a check-in where we'll describe our here and now feelings.
Think how you would honestly respond if someone asked you, how are you?
Then, we'll choose a topic and talk, from our own experiences, about what that means to us.
No direct questions, no advice, no disagreement, just open listening and validation.
And at the end, we'll check out.
How are you now?
And that's it.
Well, alongside the podcast, we'll be providing support, guidance and connection around the topic each week on our social media and on our meetup. So head there now, during or after the podcast to get and stay connected.
But for now, let's get into it.
How you doing, mate? Yeah?
I'm alright, I'm alright. You know when you feel like I've got to do this, this and this, I haven't done it, and yeah, I'm alright.
There's a lot in that without saying much, you said quite a lot. I mean, not that you asked, but you know, I'm feeling pretty great. I mean, you did ask before we went live, so I'll let you off. Yeah, I'm having a really good day. Yeah, had some really good news regards my work situation this morning. So I don't know. Why don't we just jump into a check-in then, rather than sort of talking about how we're feeling without sort of actually, you know, formalizing the structure. I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling like a big fat door has just closed behind me on a chapter of my life that has weighed so heavily on me for such a long time. And yeah, I've had a really positive conversation with my new boss, and I'm feeling really ready to go. That's how I'm feeling.
Nice. I'm gonna say kind of relaxed, just like satisfied, I suppose. Yeah, satisfied. Like things are ticking over very, very nicely, and I've taken actions in the areas where I need to take actions. And I think I do often get very nervous when I'm not addressing problems, because then stress builds up. But there's a lot of things that are out of my control, and there are other things that I don't have to do right now. So yeah, I feel quite satisfied that what I'm doing right now is good enough, and that's a nice place to be in.
What I think's really interesting about feeling satisfied is in those periods where we're not feeling extreme or like surges of certain emotions. It's nice to know that where your level rests is a position of contentment and satisfaction, rather than a resting in worry, which is probably where we both were historically.
Yeah.
In between things, I wouldn't be relaxed. I would be stressed just as a default. But speaking of journeys, we are on episode 2 of this 10-step journey. And today's topic is
Judgement.
Judgment is a very loaded topic. And just like looking at how we checked in, for example, we both seem quite comfortable in where we're at and in our own skin, and quite reflective. And that's usually when we're not applying like negative judgment on ourselves. I think judgment in my past a lot of it has come from myself and what I imagine I'm getting from other people, and that can sometimes motivate you know, like me against the world and all that. But sometimes it can paralyze you as well and stop you from doing things, because for me it's linked to a lot of things. Like embarrassment is a really strong emotion for me, and yeah, fear, and just I'll get shown up. You know, I'm not good enough, I'll get shown up, and judgment is such a loaded issue for me.
I would agree with the idea. When I sort of started thinking about judgment, the first type of judgment that came into my mind was more self-judgment rather than judgment of others, because my view of embarrassment is I don't really feel it in that moment in the same way that I know that you do. You experience acute embarrassment, if it, you know, wrongly or rightly, not to invalidate that feeling, but you know, a lot of the time I wouldn't think that you should feel it. For me, I don't really feel that embarrassment or that sense of judgment in the moment. It's on reflection in an unhealthy way, sort of ruminating, reconsidering, going over, overthinking things that have happened, and actually placing judgment into that thought, where really a lot of the time there isn't that judgment. But I know where that comes from. That comes from trauma and, whereby judgment has been unfairly placed upon situations. And now I've got into a pattern of thinking that people are out to judge me, even though now I'm surrounding myself with people that I know don't treat me like that and don't think like that and do think good things about me and do think the best of me. I still put that judgment into the scenario when I'm reflecting on it.
For sure. Like, if I look at moments in my own life, like how many times was I judged by others? Probably a handful of times in my own life that I've been harshly judged by others, and often it's the things that happen in childhood, and that then your past then stays with you and shows up in your present, and that feeling of acute embarrassment might not be the fact that like I've played a dodgy pass at football. It might be all those other like feelings from my past coming up, and I think that's definitely linked to my ADHD condition, is that I can't put a gate in there sometimes. That will just flood out when I'm put under intense pressure, especially like psychologically, or if someone's really pressing me on something, or perceive someone to be very, very critical of me, then this judgment really grips hold of me, and I have to remove myself from that situation and take a breather, or have very good people who I can kind of offload to. So I do think that like judgment, it comes mainly from ourselves, but it's rooted in experiences, usually from childhood. That's my experience. But once we push past that, it just seems like so silly, doesn't it?
It's easy to call our feelings silly when we've moved beyond the moment. But we know that it's anything but when you're feeling it. It's so unbelievably paralyzing to feel that, because when you feel judged, it really stops you from doing anything. I think judgment is, as a lot of these emotion words that we will discuss throughout the 10 episodes, a lot of these things are almost analogous to anxiety sometimes. Feeling judged is how you feel when you're anxious a lot of the time. Or at least for me, my anxiety is about judgment and shame and guilt. The interesting thing there that I picked up on was that perception of judgment. That's the key here, because there's a difference between, and the reason why we've chosen this topic is because it feels like judgment is both a stimulus for change. It's something that happens that makes you think this isn't okay, or it's something that you perceive to be happening and that you don't like that. And that's what we've been discussing so far. But the other side of it is actual judgment. And that's something that you may encounter even when you decide to make positive changes in your life. You might find that people around you, instead of it being something that you're perceiving that isn't there, actually will resist your change, resist your growth, and will judge your new found beliefs, perspectives, the things that you start to do with your life, the boundaries you start to put in place. They will actually judge you. And how do you go about dealing with judgment and criticism healthily?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it? I set myself on a new path with the changes I made in my own life few years back, and I think that did put me on a collision course with a few people, and because you're the person that's changing, and it's how they receive that, and it can be tough to accept a person who has changed so considerably, but if they're doing positive changes for themselves and they're a good person, then I'm very much behind what anyone does in terms of changing. But wrestling with that judgment is just such a tough thing. It puts down so many barriers or traps for you, in that you might have taken that first step, you've reached out, or you've set yourself on a new path, but then judgment, and which is linked to all these other things, it tells you that you're not good enough to do this. And often with me, it's very much linked to comparison. So I would never judge anyone else as harshly as I judge myself. So then, therefore, I'm already putting myself lower down than other people. So I could be sat in a room full of people on a course, for example, and be like, they're all better than me. But I'm not judging myself by the same criteria that I'm judging them. For them to be good, they just have to show up and talk, and they're good enough. Why can't I apply that same judgment to myself?
I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's the measure by which you define anything. Comparison is such an enemy of contentment. Like, if you want to just feel comfortable with who you are, you have to sort of not consider yourself in relation to other people. Just be comfortable that you are you and that's enough. And we hear that a lot in counselling and in the sort of groups and spheres that we operate in. You know, you are enough is a mantra that's spoken over and over again, but it doesn't mean anything until you understand that it doesn't mean that you are enough in comparison to other people. It means forget about other people, forget about other standards that may exist. They are artificial. There is no such thing as a definitive scale of goodness or smartness or beauty or how much someone has achieved. There is no like hierarchy on which we all sit and we're just trying to climb up there. That is only in our minds. That judgment as to where we sit on that ladder is made up. It's in our mind, and we can choose to forget about that. I'm really proud of your sort of story for many, many reasons, obviously what it's brought about. But when you said you took action and it led you to collide with people in your life, and it did lead to that judgment and to that, in some ways, you lost some people in terms of the closeness of those relationships. I know that when I've thought about making positive change and I've thought about doing things that are right for me that maybe will irk other people, I have preempted that judgment and it has stopped me. So to see in someone like you that you've pushed through that, I'm just in awe of that type of behavior. I think whenever someone behaves like that, and risks it all to just do what they know is right for them, I think that's the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself in your mental health journey. Hence why it's the second episode of this podcast.
Do you know what? Hearing that back from you is I'm a bit blown away by it, because we don't treat ourselves with the same thing that we do other people, do we? And that is kind of a very good reflection of what happened. The quote I always go to on that is, comparison is the thief of joy. In that I do move away. If I realise I'm doing that, it often is when I'm in a negative mood. So for example, I've got a WhatsApp group with some mates, and there's 5 lads in the WhatsApp group. Now, 2 of those lads are doctors. One of the guys is really high up in the fire service, and one is a music editor at a very, very well-known newspaper, right? And I'm the 5th guy. So, like, for many, many years, I've had to wrestle with the fact that, like, yes, I earn considerably less money than all those 4 guys, but I love those guys. They're funny guys. They're like ace guys. But if I just base it on like where we are in our life, I'm already doing myself a disservice. I'm the only one out of those 5 guys who's done a career change. But again, that comparison it's not useful, because it just pits you against other people. It's running your own race. So comparing myself to where I was 5 years ago, like I'm way more knowledgeable and fitter and happier, I'm healthier. That's a surefire way to lift my mood. I'm already sitting up in my chair. Like positive judgments as well. Like you're swinging the pendulum back in your favour and giving yourself a chance. And I'm very much for that. And one way I do that, and I don't know if I ruffle feathers for saying this, but I've lowered my standards considerably. And I'm not saying I'm doing a piss poor job, but like I always say, this done is better than perfect thing. Like there's many ways to skin a cat. Like there's many ways to make a podcast. I made a podcast off the back of nothing, just recording it on my phone. Here we are doing this amazing podcast, which I'm absolutely loving. Like it comes from just giving something a go. There's just like, fuck it, I'm going to try it. That was the first blog I ever did, and that spawned the group. And I took away that need to like hit a certain level. It was just give it a go and see where you get to. And if we're talking about first steps, that's why I feel like I was successful.
It's always the sort of enemy of progress to imagine what perfection looks like, imagine what the end goal looks like, and then tell yourself about all the things that are in the way between here and there. Like that for me has been a big, big issue in the last sort of 6 to 7 years. I remember when I was at drama school, probably just before my mental health really, really took a tumble, and they talked about these handshakes. I remember this so vividly. I remember this lesson. I can't remember what the context was, but describing like, how do you shake someone's hand? And they described 3 ways. They described the super firm, assertive, grab them, really shake their, really rock their joints about, they described the wet flannel, soft, sort of almost
wet
wilting,
fish.
like a wet fish handshake. And then they described one which was where you don't really think about it at all, and it's just you're in the moment and you're just doing it, and it's just like a handshake you would do with a friend. And they said if you could choose any of those handshakes to give or receive, it would always be that third one. And yet, too often when we overthink something or we consider what might go wrong, we end up with that first or second. Either the too much pressure, too much focus, and sort of that comes across, or we don't really commit to it and we sort of wet fish it. So I think that when we're talking about doing things for ourselves or making sort of change or just moving forward, as soon as we start to tell ourselves that we're deficient in some way, we start behaving in that one or two. We either start putting too much pressure on, or we just back away from it, rather than just, like you say, don't put that judgment on the next thing that you do. Whenever you do something, allow it to just be. And if you keep showing up in that way with the right intentions, eventually you will, end up doing something that's productive, valuable, helpful, whatever it may be. And sometimes those things will not go anywhere. They won't necessarily be of any value. But the process of not judging yourself will be of value, because over time you'll start to see, I can do things and there's no real harm in just doing it, even if it doesn't go anywhere.
Absolutely. Now I do fit too much. Sometimes I have to say no to doing things because actually I just don't have the time to do it. I was almost addicted, hooked on doing new positive things. Like, let's say, like in a week, I'd be playing football 3 times. I'd be doing Pilates. I'd be doing yoga. I'd be going to a meditation class, because I was just like I was a junkie for these ideas. But at the same time, I couldn't do them all. I don't want to say lowering your standards, but making it easier for yourself to succeed. Let's call it that.
You are describing the power of judgment in taking action, because when you say lower your standards, I think, to me, that sounds like not caring as much about how your action might be perceived. Like when you talk about Pilates and yoga and things like that, those are things that if you cared about what people thought, you are putting yourselves on a collision course for what you might describe as embarrassment, because you're likely going to be shit at those things when you first do them. You're likely going to be a beginner. You're likely going to look like a bit of a tit when you're trying to do poses and stuff. But when you say lowering your standards, what I'm hearing in my world would be, I'm no longer going to allow what others might think of me in those scenarios to stop me from doing it. So I think another one of those related to health and fitness is when you go to the gym for the first time and you're always worried that you're going to be the fat one in the corner or the one that can't lift anything heavier than 8 kilos. But everyone has to start somewhere. And that's true of everything. When we're talking about small steps and stopping yourself because you see the end and it feels so far away, or it feels like there's so much in the way. Everyone that's lifting 100 kilos, or everyone who can do one-arm handstands and whatever, they started off being as shit and as scared and as nervous as you might have been. But what they didn't do is allow that potential judgment or actual judgment to stop them from just getting going with it. It's not fair to put your perception of someone's judgment on someone else, in the sense that, if I feel like I've upset or embarrassed or pissed off a mate or someone that I just met, then I start behaving differently around that person because I'm worried about what they might be thinking about me. And then I'm not showing up for them as the kind of friend that they need or that they want, because I'm backing off, I'm hiding away, I'm being careful with myself, I'm not being congruous, I'm not opening up. And so all of a sudden I'm the one that's muddied the water. They might not be thinking any of those things. And I've just decided for us that this is the way our relationship is now. You're judging me and I'm going to behave differently around you. And I'm not going to speak to you as much. Or, because sometimes when you feel judged, you might feel shame, you might feel embarrassment. But sometimes when I feel judged, I feel angry. I feel like that person shouldn't be judging me. And actually they're not judging me, but I'm now angry at them because I think they are.
For me, going to a place where I could talk about my mental health, which I've talked about when I went to that group in London previously. And the second thing, again, while I was in London, I identified weight loss as a thing that damaged my confidence. And then I went online and I found Man vs. Fat. So I joined when I was in London. I knew nobody. They started the league already. Joined a team. I didn't know one. Like, I was probably one of the only Northerners there. But immediately then you're in the room. And I didn't feel those hang-ups because obviously I was actually there was loads of guys who were heavier than me. You know, I was probably one of in the 10% of the guys who were lighter in weight. So that took a lot of pressure off me and these judgments. So I wasn't looking around the room thinking these people are judging me, but actually they might have been because I was slimmer than them. You know, but again, I can't determine that. And I found a place, and that was nice. That took away a lot of pressure on me, and the judgments weren't coming up as quick. It was more positive. You're doing the right thing here. And that spiraled and spiraled to when I came back to Manchester. So I just think these are really good examples. And obviously what we provide in the groups is very similar to that, I think.
Man vs. Fat is a really good example, actually, of a different type of judgment. And you touched on it there about you didn't feel judgment for being overweight, which was how you felt in general society. And again, I had the same experience of joining Man vs. Fat. But you said that you felt like you might be judged for being too slim, perhaps, but you couldn't know that. Well, I did know that. I directly had that judgment thrown at me at Man vs. Fat. It's a really good example of exactly what I thought judgment would be about in terms of this mental health journey, because it was my progress. I'd lost 15 kilos, and guys coming into the league were like, what on earth are you doing here? Like, what, this is ridiculous. Like, you know, it's a joke, and really sort of trying to bring me down a peg or two, trying to stop me from being proud of what I'd done by sort of almost shaming me for being a part of this organization whilst being at that point, you know, at a very healthy BMI. And that's exactly what might happen to people, and has happened to me to a very small amount, but to other people I know has happened in a greater sort of level of frequency or severity. In your case, we've already mentioned it. When you start to make changes in your life from a mental health perspective, you will start to, I think boundaries is how it manifests quite a lot. Like, you start to say no to things. You start to disagree in times when people would be like, well, this person never speaks up, never disagrees. You start to not react in the way that people expect. And you may encounter the person listening to this who starts to make positive changes. You may encounter literal judgment and criticism in that moment. And it was difficult for me to take, because I was proud of what I'd done, and these people were trying to take it away. I managed to battle through that. And the way I got through that was through peer support in that particular moment. I had my teammates, a lot of whom were now, or are now, my friends, and I could go to them and say, this is how I'm feeling. I feel a little bit like, you know, usually over a pint at the pub, I'm feeling like my progress isn't recognized, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they would say, yeah, I understand how you feel, blah, blah, blah. And just by listening and by validating me, I was able to deal with that judgment.
Change is difficult and growth is uncomfortable, and often when you see people who are close to you or peers that you measure yourself against, that puts a mirror up to you. So like, I have a mate who he used to be quite a big lad actually, and he lost loads of weight through running. And I'd started running and stuff, but he lost loads of weight. He still does it now actually. And sometimes he posts stuff and does these runs and is getting PBs, and that holds a mirror up to me. For the last 6 months, I've just been eating and drinking, you know. And I was like, oh, like, I really like the guy actually, but I was like, oh, what a bastard! Like, look at him doing really well in his life. But I'm happy for him. But it's held up a bit of a mirror to me.
Some brilliant things in there that have just made me reflect. I mean, whatever the opposite of Schadenfreude is, where you feel pissed off that someone's doing well, is a feeling that we all have. We all have that instinctual judgment. But the other thing that I thought was coming out of what you were saying that I know I'm prone to is judging other people for not having the same perspective, belief, opinions, priorities as you. And in both types of feeling that I think are instinctive, and we shouldn't feel shame about feeling those things, I've grown to a place where I can recognize that feeling in myself and manually steer myself away from the course that would take me down. So a good example today, actually, literally today, I've just had this brilliant conversation about my new job, but I was still a bit worried that was going to fall through. And I saw a woman that I started with at KPMG. She was flying high all the time we were at KPMG. She was doing brilliantly. She was getting exceptional praise. And I remember saying to her sort of maybe 6 months before I left, I was like, look, if you carry on the way you're going, you know, as soon as we get through the grad scheme, you're going to get promoted and promoted and promoted. And, you know, you're a potential future partner. I can see it. And I saw this morning that she'd been promoted to manager. And this woman, I think, must only be 26, 27. And to be a manager at this stage is fantastic. And there was that moment in my mind that I'm not going to feel shame about, that was like, even though I've got a job that I really, really, really want and I'm really happy to have and I'm doing very well, there was that moment of like, oh, jealousy, that could have been me, was I, is she better? Just that moment. But then the progress that I know I've made in respect of that is that I went, hang on a second, you admire this person, you think this person deserves that, it's meritocratic, they're brilliant. And, I could congratulate that person and say, I told you, I said you were going to do this, and this is amazing, it's great to see. I know that growing up, especially with regards to politics, I used to be so binary about it. It was, I was right and you're wrong. I'm going to go for that. If you don't want to agree with me, then you're not going to get a rest. I'm not going to agree that there is pluralism here. We're going to debate this until you back down. And I would go and go and go and go. I'm able to now realize that I still believe the same things that I believed, but I can allow other people's opinions to exist, debate in a healthy way if I feel like that's something I'm interested in, but I can accept that there is no potential right and wrong in those cases, and it's not about that judgment on something. It's about the quality and the level of discourse you can have with that person and the relationship you can therefore develop.
It makes life a lot easier when we take these judgments away. A couple of things off that. Like, it's very easy to judge others from having an opposite opinion, but when you take that away, that's a barrier for us connecting with each other, isn't it? So, for example, I don't like getting into heated arguments and discussions because I get quite emotional and I don't always articulate myself right. So, if we're having an argument or a disagreement, I would always say lose that because I wouldn't have the stamina to keep going. So if 10 years ago you and I were to butt horns on something, 100% you would win that argument because I just wouldn't have the heart for it, and you'd walk away thinking you're right and I'd walk away thinking I'm wrong, when actually it's not necessarily about that. Some people are just conditioned better for that. So now, as a more compassionate person, because I've learned compassion for myself, I am trying to be more almost aggressively compassionate to other people. So, the world is more polarized than ever. We see things that are happening on the news. It's right versus left, and you could say good versus evil, but it's not as simple as that, is it? And I'm trying so hard, even though it's been difficult, not to judge people on their worst points. So there are a lot of people out there who I know, and people who've been very close to me in my life. Some of them have views that I find quite hateful, and I'm thinking that actually isn't them, but the 95% of the rest of the things of that person are more than acceptable. Even within my own parents. So it's everyone has a different set of pressures on them. So rather than just judging someone solely on their worst point, because if someone judged me on the worst thing I've ever done, I mean, I've never killed anyone, but you can fast forward back 7-8 years, me being drunk and doing stupid things and just being if you just judged me solely on that and wrote me off for the rest of my life, that would be unfair. So why I can't really be doing that for other people. So there's people out there who are really struggling and they commit crimes and they have addictions and you don't give people a chance if you're quick to judge like that. And often the people who are the quickest to judge, like you often reflected on, haven't done that self-awareness themselves. Now I pause a beat. I just pause, take a beat. Do I really want to say that? Is there anything to be gained from me going on Twitter and saying that? No, because I don't. Social media for me, getting into social media arguments, especially in the last, say, 5 years since things have gone a bit downhill, in my opinion, I am just not interested in doing that. I have nothing to gain from my mental health and relationships by getting involved in that discourse.
If someone judged me on my worst moments, my lowest moments, my most depraved sort of thoughts and behaviors, I'm not saying they're particularly bad, but they definitely don't represent who I actually am. I've definitely delved into areas of behavior that I'm not ashamed of anymore because I know why I behaved in that way and I know why I was in that pattern of thought. and I'm allowing myself to be forgiven from myself, and I've given myself that compassion. But if you were to take that and go, right, well, John, you've done that, you're marked by that for the rest of your life, then how could I ever do anything of worth again? How could I ever live a life that was meaningful? So I think that's a massively important point, and one that I'm sure a lot of people, if they are on a journey to getting better, a lot of people will be sitting there and saying, but I did this, I hurt this person, I gave this up, I took those things, I said that thing, I've ruined that relationship, and therefore the rest of my life is defined by that. It really, really isn't. We've both been teachers. You literally get assessed on your lessons. You literally have a person from an outside agency in Ofsted come in and judge you and judge your environment. I've been an actor where I got judged as a job. That was basically my job. They say auditioning is your job as an actor, basically. And, you know, it is really difficult when you're consistently put in those situations and you are consistently judged to maintain the balance of your mental health. Consistently putting yourself in a space where you aren't being judged means that when you do go into a situation that you are going to be judged in an appropriate way, i.e. you're being assessed whether you're good enough for that job or you're the right person for that job, you can go into it without fear. It's not like you've got all the irrational sense of judgment flying around, and then when a rational sense of judgment comes in, it just adds to it. You can just pick and choose what's appropriate and what's not in terms of whether to feel judged or not. But having that place, for us, it's talk about it, mate. For you, it could be somewhere else where you can feel seen and heard consistently and you can understand other people's perspective. Just means, I don't know, that pressure's taken off. But on that, yeah, let's move to the checkout. Kick us off. How are you feeling now, Mike?
Yeah, still very satisfied. Quite like quietly confident would be a way to check out, in that like there's a space for everybody's viewpoints, and often when we do podcasts, that is a situation where I can feel very judged, because I think like, what if people don't get on board with what I'm saying or get on board with my ideas or my viewpoints? And actually, again, I can't put myself in their head, and just because they might have a different viewpoint, say, doesn't mean that what I'm doing is wrong. It's not about right and wrong. It's about growth, and we're here, and it doesn't matter if I think about what people in our WhatsApp group think about it, or people who run other podcasts think about it. If it stimulates them to think about their own situation and then have a thought, it could be positive or negative, then I think we've already won. And I can't wait to bring this topic to the groups. I think this will be a really fantastic session.
I'm feeling, I'd say, proud of myself. And it's okay to say that. I'm not going to judge myself for saying that. But I'm also really proud of you and of the people in our community, because this conversation's made me reflect on just how much growth there is. Because I think judgment has been, for me, the key barrier to growth, potential, perceived and real. And reflecting on everything we just discussed, I'm so aware of, look where we are. Look what we've done. Look, you know, I'm talking about starting this new job, and you're talking about going for a job interview that I know that you would have been trepidatious about a few months ago. And I remember having these conversations about this period of our life, this potential future that we were talking about 6-9 months ago. And we're here, and we've done it, and we're in the headspace that we wanted to be. And I'm just feeling really proud. I feel that's amazing. And on that note, I guess we should leave on a sense of contentment and pride. And I'll catch you on the next one.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate your interest in what we do. And if you'd like to hear more, please subscribe, share, or review this podcast. And if you'd like to have a chat, join a session, or just have some fun, then come find us at Talk About It Mate on all social media.